Please put your hands together to welcome to the stage Bridget White.
Thank you for the introduction, Jeremy. I'm super happy to be here. I've returned home after 14 years and I'm really excited to join the team at Warren and Mahoney. They're a fantastic crew. So just a little bit about me. I graduated architecture school in Wellington and I moved to Wanaka to pursue my dream of being amongst nature and the mountains in particular and continue my career in architecture. But after a few years, I realised that I needed to expand my horizon and be immersed amongst a culture or an expertise that knows how to combine nature and architecture in the Scandinavian side of the world, in particular Oslo. So I packed my things and I moved to Oslo to work at Nordic as an architect and in design technology, which is BIM, digitalisation and innovation. But it was actually the things happening around my job that would shape my career. Things like having a vision, understanding the big picture before getting down into the details. It would be about getting creative and keeping motivation up when things didn't look as good as they could or if the situation wasn't as fun as it could be. Having a laugh, it was really important. And it would be about ensuring that I would share my knowledge and expertise with the ones coming after. There's a great term in Norwegian for the leaders out there that is, don't drop your ladder because I'm coming after. And I think that's a really good lesson because it's our responsibility to make sure the students and the ones coming after us understand what we've learned and are inspired by the work that we do. So I'm back to share some of my adventures in Norway and just a quick introduction to the office that I was working at. Nordics Office of Architecture is 400 architects, 30 nationalities and 5 offices. There's a lot of similarities here with Warren and Mahoney, so it was a great fit for me to transition over to this office. We had 3 offices, Iceland, Norway and Denmark, and we operated as a one studio approach, so I could be sitting in the main office and working with the team that sat in Iceland and in Denmark. And we worked on projects around the world. And under Corona, this was no problem for us because we knew how to do it and we knew how to work together. And this expanded over the years. We worked on projects in the small scale, wellness, cabins, houses, the medium scale, schools, residential developments, kindergartens, residential complexes and offices, and the grand, airports, hospitals and governmental centres. So I'm going to tell you 2 Nordic project stories which combine architecture, design technology and team, and that were really successful at the end of the day and were a lot of fun to be a part of. I'm going to start with a quote. In Scandinavia, they like to keep things simple, and to translate this would be a long chapter. Is there anyone from Denmark, Sweden or Norway? Yes. Where are you from? Denmark, okay. You can just read away. But the topic of this conversation here is that the best way we can tell a story is to include others on the journey to making that story. And I think this is really important and it leads to a much richer way of developing projects. So I'm going to tell you a story, my first story, which is about a university hospital in the town of Stavanger. Now, Stavanger is on the southeast coast of Norway. You know, Norway is New Zealand on the other side of the world. And Stavanger, 130,000 people live there. And it's a town which is called the oil capital of Norway. A lot of people are employed in the oil industry and they love it. They love oil over there. And as a tourist, this is what you do. You come to Stavanger and you pretend you're on the oil rigs and there's a fire and you have to evacuate, and this is my family and we all did the routine. It was great. We had fun. But there were 2 major things that would be catalysts for the way the hospital project would shape itself. The The first thing was in 2002, the government purchased all of the hospitals in Norway. They started shutting down the small health centres and making centralised super hospitals to increase the quality of healthcare. The second thing that would happen, in 2014, there was a major oil crash in Norway, and this led to a huge loss of jobs, and it was a real crisis for the town of Stavanger. A huge loss of jobs, and a lot of people with a very interesting skill base. If you think about an oil platform, they are built modular and prefabricated because you can't build offshore. So they're built off-site and they're hoisted over and they're built in the sea as modular parts. So they have the industry of modular and prefabricated construction, and you have a range of skill levels. You've got people that can actually build and people that are unskilled. We call unskilled workers. And this would be a catalyst for how the project would be constructed. So this is the Stavanger University Hospital. You've got 4 major buildings around a central parade, is what we called it. You've got patient beds, operation, you've got laboratories, and you've got emergency. The 2 main focuses for the hospital was, firstly, the connection to nature for healing and therapy. So you can see the major focus of visual and physical connections to nature. And the second was walking as a form of rehabilitation. So you'll see here that there's 2 rings on the 2nd and 3rd floor around the hospital, and the buildings themselves are rings. So this is a figure 8. You can walk continuously and around here. We had a great client. So the hospitals are owned by the government, and the client understood the benefits of making a maintainable strategy across the entire project team. They came with their own standards. This would be a paperless project, and they trusted our expertise to meet their expectations. So we also had a superb team. We worked as one unit to meet the needs of the client in the most efficient way possible. So this is the hospital, and when I joined the project in early phase in 2016, there was a lot of frustration. We had 110,000 metres of squared of design, 50,000 square metres of facades, and 640 bedrooms with en-suites. That's a lot of repetition, and we had a team whose digitalisation skills were like this. And we didn't have the tools, the digital tools we needed to handle this repetition. So we were a team that was very frustrated at that time. I'm a millennial, and we said as a team, why should we have to bother with all this repetition? If we know what 1 is, then we just have to set it out along the space. And this is a design repetition issue. So this was the concept. If we have a differing LOD of these repeated designs, how can we step back and say, what we actually need to know is what this LOD contains, and we're dealing with that much more volumetric study of how we lay out the hospital planning. And then when we know what 1 contains, we can actually unfold it. But as long as we know what 1 contains, then why do we need to know what they're doing in the other spaces, just where they are? So this, in a sense, is a single problem for the architects. We were working with design repetition and how we handle that as our own problem. But when we start talking about a modular and prefabricated concepts, it becomes a team problem. You're no longer dealing with a repetition that affects yourself, but it affects everybody that's involved in that construction method. The main difference being information. We needed to be able to attach information to these cross-discipline modules to distribute for fabrication, pricing, and assembly. So then we needed to work as a team. So we began thinking about configuration design. How are we going to build this modular hospital? And we employed Bryden Wood to come in and assess the possibilities here. So what we've got here is a bedroom and its mirror, and we start looking at it for its potential for modular construction. We pulled off the facade and looked at the interior, and the facade is 2 different prefabricated units. And what we ended up with was a ceiling unit that we actually didn't go for in the end, a vertical unit, which is structure and mechanical services, all in one contract. We've got a smart door, which contains electricity in the door. We've got the bathroom pods, and we've got a smart bedroom furniture around the bedroom, which contains gas and air. We've got some furniture units that contain all of the sinks and the mirrors and everything there. And we've got a furniture unit here, which is a fold-out bed that clicks into the back of these prefabricated facades. We needed to rethink how we were going to attack this project in terms of BIM. And this is actually the final key to the puzzle was found by the electrical engineer who was originally a builder. And he had made a little script to tell himself how to move his light switches when the architects kept fiddling around with the walls. He was so frustrated, he made his own little plugin. And this is the same technology evolved into the idea that we have, our project is actually this now. It's a series of volumes which control everybody's models. It controls the architecture model, it controls the structural model, and it controls the mechanical model. And what it does is it means that we have full control over repetition. If anyone moves something or changes it, this model will override it and reset it back to being correct. So we have no problem understanding whether the bedroom in the second floor is the same as the bedroom in the third floor, or the bathroom as it is. And we called it the placeholder technology. How does it work? Well, I've just taken a little simplified version of the interface, but what it does is it understands the information of the volume and it attaches itself to the discipline parts of the module. And that means that, it's getting a little caught up here. That means that we have a modular team that controls the placement and the containership of these modules. And what the technology does is it just runs it out. So we end up with this kind of project workflows. We had to also design how this project was going to be assembled. This is a concept that we worked on with Autodesk and Project Frog. It's not what we went for, but if you know the work of Danny Forster and architecture at the Marriott, it's also a method, and the TLC modular, it's also a method that could be viable. It's not what we went for, but we had to try to visualize how we were going to do this, and for everybody in the team. This is the actual assembly, and this is the vertical unit which connects into the back here. This is a smart wall which contains all the electricity and mechanical. This is the prefabricated module that flat packs and connects into the smart wall. We've got the smart doors here and here, and in between these two units would be a dumb wall. There's no electricity, no mechanical, no nothing. And we had unskilled workers building these walls in between, and also assembling the modules in place. So we could engage the oil industry not only in concept, but in actually building this building. And this is what it looked like for you guys on the site. We had to design the way information would be sent. This is actually Solibri, which the project group used. On site, they were using PIMS and StreamBIM. But we changed the way that we delivered information so that the contract, the control zone, and the name of the prefab group was sent to site, because I didn't need to know anything else. So we're using BIM kiosk, so everything was digital. We produced some drawings, but these were all digital drawings, and they used the model actively on site. These are the modules on site. So this is the bathroom module, as you can see, and it turned into a little gem. And the one thing that's been so successful is that the time that we could have used on fixing the repetition, we could use on making these really beautiful. And who doesn't love a good bathroom? It's lovely. This is the furniture in the facade. So this folds out so you can stay with your family member or friend, and it folds back in so it doesn't affect the layout of the room. So that was a real success. And we actually had a furniture industrial designer working on this project with us. This is the project under construction. You can see that the prefabricated facade was just hoisted into place, and it was very, very quick. The panels were just placed and moved on and clipped and clipped and clipped. So it was a fascinating building site to be a part of. This is the project right now, or a couple of months ago, and actually it's already grown. This is just phase 1 of the hospital project. The project won some digital awards in 2018, but there's actually a lot of other innovative routines in the project, so I'm happy if anyone's interested, just come ask, and I'll tell you what else they did. But hey, repetition is not just in hospital projects. It's also in multi-res, it's also in student accommodation, schools, hotels, and in joining Warren and Mahoney, I see that they're addressing the same issue in a digital way, and it's really exciting. So yeah, looking forward to being a part of what happens there. Okay. I'm going to change pace a little bit, and I'm going to jump forward to what's happening right now in Norway. And we're going to take a little bit of a sustainability twist, and we're going to look at how refurbishment and reuse is being promoted in Europe right now for reducing CO2 emissions. Another little quote here, but this quote is important because it says that if we are going to succeed with reuse at an industrial scale, we have to set down our walls and we have to collaborate across the entire industry. And this is by a friend of mine who works in digitalization of reuse elements. What we did is we worked on a proposal for how we could work more digitally in having a circular future in the design for refurbishment and reuse. Now, before we get going, I just want to center everyone on what's happening in Europe because it's a little different than what's happening here. But I think we should keep in our brains that there's a lot of potential for being better at waste here in New Zealand and Australia. But this in particular is because of the amount of building stock that exists in Europe. So in Norway right now, they're demolishing 22,000 buildings every year. The annual CO2 emissions globally in the construction industry is at 13%, and they're only refurbishing 1.4% of the building stock. The waste production in the AEC industry is at 20%, and they're only reusing 4% of that. 40% is downcycled, but that goes into other channels rather than being directly reused in the building industry. So what's the problem? These are some pretty sad facts. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty and risk associated with having an existing condition. There's a lot of extra communication that goes on in refurbishment, and we're affected by the skill and will to refurbish and reuse. But in 2023, last year in July, the government of Norway ignited innovation and new thinking by saying, every project for demolition and refurbishment needs to be mapped for reuse. And that caused a bit of panic in the industry, and things started happening really quickly. First of all, the government donated this giant tent, which was used for a building project, to store reuse elements in. Companies started making sub-companies for circularity, for storage, their methodology, their assessment, and how they could have a circular economy inside their own company. Software companies began to innovate in silos. How could they promote certain digitalization, like a TradeMe type forums or certain plugins, but in a very isolated sense? Projects started popping up incorporating reuse, and if you're a student, I would go and look at Future Build, just use Google Translate, but they do a lot of really exciting things inside of reuse and rehabilitation, and they're forward thinking in the building industry. This project here was not only designed using reuse elements, it's also designed for disassembly, so future reuse. Municipalities started banding together and creating standards for how they were going to deal with reuse in their own areas. However, we were still quite frustrated in the industry. We were seeing projects in our own offices be demolished, and they were built in 2006. we didn't have a plan, but what we decided is that we would band together. And here you see architecture firms that would usually compete, sitting together at the same table and trying to figure out why are we not reusing more things when they're in good shape. We also brought in industry expert from Veidekke to clients to other innovative digital initiatives, and we're all sitting around and discussing how we could improve this. So there was a lot of frustration in everybody in the same industry. What we did is Twin Solutions and Nordics sat together with a client, and we designed a way that we could close the circular loop digitally and promote reuse. So this is a real project. This is Hashlavangen Femten, and usually this project would be demolished and we wouldn't see it again. But we said, hey, why don't we know more about the existing conditions and start to think of that as maybe harvesting these elements for reuse and as a catalyst for design, and see what we can do. How can we get from here to here in a more sustainable way? So the first thing that we did, we naturally digitalized the existing condition using point cloud technology or scan to BIM. And this is also very relevant for historical projects or comparison in projects which may have suffered movement under seismic activity. And this has become actually much more affordable than it was before. But now we have a digital replica of our project, and we know exactly what we've got at the office. We remove the time and the money it takes to get to and from site, and we've got a platform for everybody to engage in. Yes. We made a digital replica in BIM of the existing conditions, and using technology which is being created right now, we started having the ability to scan objects that were identified as being potentially reused, and this data was structured and fed into a system for restructuring. This is something that AI can do for us, and pulls it into a platform, and the platform we were looking at was Autodesk Built. That this platform could actually pull our data in and start sorting it and spitting it out for us at the end of the day. So what we've got now is a digital platform that invites everybody in. Say we need toxicity reports, or we need confirmation of that it's possible to take this away. It's confirmed for reuse. We're actually going to do it, and we start looking at the potential of elements inside this usually waste environment. So our project, our existing condition, started to look a little bit more like this. We had the DT slabs, we had the hollow core slabs that were identified, we had some really good ceilings, great condition, and we had singular objects like glass system walls, toilets, furniture, and doors. And our existing condition started to look a little bit more like this. And we could not only understand what we had using the data attached, but we could actually give it a status. So we could understand where we were in that phasing process along the way. And this is actually really important because the contract needs to know when it's okay to be disassembled, where it is, if it's confirmed. You know, the responsibility is a very hazy area that needs to be obviously addressed. So now we're back in the native design environment for us, which was Revit, and through the technology created by Twin Solutions, they're bringing in this key information from either the donor building, which is what we had, or in the future, a marketplace environment, and we're designing with reuse. And we believe that if we have the ability to design with reuse, we have more chance to actually meet our goals of sustainability with refurbishment. These elements also tell you how many who have left, what are the parameters, what is the fire rating, how big are they, do they need some painting? We have all of this here, and the client can be involved and understand, well, what are the implications for my project if I'm using reuse? And we went back to the client and we presented the project like this. Here's your hollow core, here's your ceilings, here's your DT slabs, and this is what the project can look like if you can incorporate an ambitious level of reuse, but we've got to start somewhere, right? And we can start comparing, okay, what happens to the project if it's built brand new? We can start creating a monetary comparison of CO2 emissions when you incorporate reuse as to if you don't, and hope that they go with this. There's obviously monetary complications with the reuse, but the industry is saying, hey, we've got to start somewhere, and the more we know about it and the more routines get into play, the easier and the less costly this is going to be. And we're hoping it's going to be cheaper because we're saving money buying these all the time. So let's ground ourselves a little bit back in the New Zealand market. Here we have Toombul House by Warren and Mahoney and the advanced BIM team, and they're doing the same. They're using digital technology, point cloud technology, to map the existing building and make design decisions about whether they're going to keep or remove things and where things are viable for change. So it's a very exciting environment to be a part of. Not only that, but they're using Revisto to give status, similar to Autodesk Build, over these objects to say, hey, these ones are isolated for removal or these ones should be kept, and giving these a lifeline in a digital environment. So there we are in New Zealand. So I wanted to end off with just one last note to take away, that frustration is actually an opportunity for innovation. And I think that we as Kiwis and Australians are really good at this. So I'm excited to be involved in the environment here. That's it from me. Should I sit here?
Thank you, Bridget. That was overwhelming. We're going to be moving to our next panel shortly, but before I invite them up, our friends, the AV guys, might put this online for reuse. I think we're going to capture it in BIM, and then we'll put it in the marketplace. I've got a couple of questions on the slide, but one I want to ask first, and that second project was extraordinary, but the part where it really lifted off when you said reuse on the project or in the marketplace. And all of a sudden, I realised that the obligation to, the opportunity from frustration of thinking, oh, well, this is our project and we can reuse all these things, and being either compelled to include as much as possible because it's a discrete ecosystem. But the moment you start to think that these can be shared with other people or other projects, it opens up so much possibility in ensuring more reuse. So how far away do you think we are from that kind of broader ecosystem from the starting point that you showed us?
Well, it requires complete coalition across so many industries. Yep. And it helps with government regulations, of course, because that ignites the need to change. But we're looking at who's responsible, who's handling the risk, and I think we all have to decide that we're on the same team, and then that's when things can start being exciting, I think.
So my follow-up question to that one would be, living in the two different worlds that you've been in Norway and here, which country do you think is better placed to get there quicker for that level of collaboration?
Oh, to be honest, there's two things I think I would mention. Obviously, Norway's in a position where they have a lot of resources and they're in an environment that they can pull resources really quickly. But I think New Zealanders and Australians have this really special personality that kind of are keen to just have a go, and we're a little bit more open to maybe not failing, I'm not sure, but I noticed that a lot from being overseas is that we're eager to have a go and see how things pan out. It's just a natural reaction.
Great. I'm going to just go to Slido for a few questions. In about 6 minutes' time, we're going to get the panel up here for a wider discussion, but in the meantime, I'm just going to read these from here. Which software application model viewing app did you use to build mostly without drawings on the hospital project? sense?
Yeah, so to draw, we're
Yeah.
working in a range of products like Autodesk products and Tekla, but it's governmental regulation to deliver an IFC. You have to deliver an IFC, and that means that you're open to choosing the right platform on the other side of the fence, yeah.
Right. And another question here, what are the building compliance challenges associated with building component reuse in terms of certifying or approval? You know, it's been in that building for some time. Were there compliance issues that you had to address? Is that?
So there's a profession that has expertise in assessing reuse, and they have professional marking for certain elements. So there's only certain elements that have been sort of certified for reuse, and every month or so more products get certified for how they get assessed in that way. But it's a profession, a mapping profession, yeah.
So was there a significant program difference compared to a typical demolish rebuild project? Asking about the program difference between the two. You know, if it's to be demolished, you know, I can see the CO2 emissions side of it, but what was the program that the practice had to undergo to do it? Did it present challenges or make a difference there to a standard build? Was it more complex?
Yeah, so in this circumstance, obviously the structural engineers were integral to the concepts around the structural elements being either reused or hoisted up. So the problem of it was the level to level was too compact, and they were going to either hoist up each level or they were going to disassemble and reassemble. So the structural engineers were involved very heavily, and we were in charge of getting the team to understand how's it going to work and what it's going to look like. And our job was to digitalise that workflow.
And so given the kind of the novel, innovative way you're working, and was there engagement on the part of the consultants more for this kind of process than for a demolish and rebuild? I mean, that's obviously something that if it is greater, you need to have the client buy into. Is that right?
Absolutely. And this particular client, they were dedicated to being at the forefront of reuse. And that's how we knew that was a good fit, because they wanted to show, first and foremost, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it.
Right. So there's an investment more up front in the consultant proportion of the process. Great. Now, I've got a follow-up question from the person asking about software before. I'll read this straight out. Which software app was used to build without drawings and at the on-site digital terminal used by the construction team?
Yes, it was StreamBIM that was used on site. The actual kiosks, we had both BIM kiosk and there was tablets. Yep. I can't tell you exactly what the tablets are, I'm not sure, but I can find out if anyone's particularly interested in that. Yeah.
Great. I'm now going to first thank you, Bridget. That was extraordinary. The examples you showed are just kind of mind-blowing, really. And I'm sure the next gen here, before too long, will be doing all of that. And some of us will be, you know, from our rest home, wishing we had the opportunity, because we were certainly frustrated. So please join with me in thanking Bridget for